Chinese and the Japanese and the South Koreans creating work year-round and so on. I would think that there would be a labor advantage utilizing African labor. What do you say?
And that's what Christie's, right?
I was going to mention something as you were talking about the arable land and needing to grow products. That would create a need for packaging, for transport, which would also create the need for jobs.
Exactly. It's an entire supply chain, right? Anytime a country says, okay, we're going to focus on, we want to be a producing country, it has to address a number of areas in the supply chain, all of which creates jobs. But to your point, and I answered that a bit when Christy asked the question regarding currency and valuation of currencies. Most people are not aware, for instance, and when we talk about African countries, there are different spheres of influence that affects how each country does business. Mm-hmm. One of the most detrimental spheres of influence, in my opinion anyway, comes from the relationship between France and its former African colonies. We refer to them, not just we, but so the French Christian name as Francophone countries. Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. These are countries that use the French currency.
Yes. Language.
They use the language, their economy.
They're big consumers of all things French.
Well, it's even worse. Their economy is managed by the finance minister of France.
Really?
That is correct. And worse yet, the valuation of their currency depends on France. So these countries, so here's my perspective. If you cannot spend your own money and you're an independent adult, are you really an independent adult? I says no. Right?
Sure.
These are not independent countries. And so that's one challenge there with utilizing labor for these countries. But the point is, as I mentioned earlier, which is that you can't have the poorest countries in the world having labor that is not the cheapest labor in the world, right?
Mm-hmm. Correct.
The correlation would be the poorest countries in the world should have the cheapest labor because they have a lot of people who are not working,
right?
And they need jobs. So, it stands to reason. So that's the first, to me, that would be the first line of attack for African countries. In order to become export-oriented, you have to scale your currency to what your capacity as a country is, right? If you're not, earning a lot of hard currency, then you should have very low valuation relative to other currencies in the world that are convertible currencies. Okay. So African countries need to address currency to make sure that their labor is priced appropriately. And once they price their labor appropriately, guess what? Companies will want to come to do business. I want to use a narrative about Singapore. And I tie this, a head of state at the recent US Africa summit said the following. Well, we've been doing road shows, we've been going to to states, we've been coming to America, going to states and doing road shows, but we don't seem to be getting any interest. Now, maybe, since Obama has called this, since the president has stepped in and called this, maybe, things will get better. I couldn't think of a more naive statement. The reason is the US president cannot make the smallest entrepreneur decide to spend money. That's not the way the system works, right? And so that's the problem with African countries today. They don't realize that in order for them to be attractive, they have to build a better mousetrap. making sure your labor is priced appropriately is one. Okay, telling a company to come and invest, and not saying here are the reasons why you should be looking at us for a place of investment is the dumbest proposition that I can think of to make to a capitalist.